My father chains me to the radiator every night before bed. It took me years to find out why. Every night before I go to sleep, my father fastens a chain around my ankle. It's shackled to the radiator to prevent me from leaving. I can't even go to the bathroom without calling for Dad to unlock me. I was 9 when I discovered how strange that was. Dad always told me never to mention it. He said I'd get in big trouble if I did. But one day I slipped up. I accidentally blabbed to my best friend at the time, Susie, when we were at recess. "My parents let me stay up until 11 last night. Bet yours wouldn't let you do that," she'd exclaimed, a smug grin plastered across her face. "I never get to stay up late. Dad said I have to put my ankle brace on every night at 7 o'clock so the monsters don't get me." "No exceptions," I'd said, absent-mindedly jabbing a stick into an anthill. Susie had been silent for longer than normal. I turned to find her brows furrowed. "What kind of ankle brace?" "I never had to do that." In that moment, I realised 2 things. 1, that I'd said too much, and 2, that my sleeping arrangement was anything but ordinary. Dad continued to chain me to the radiator even through my teenage years. I was never allowed to have sleepovers. I wasn't allowed to go on vacations. And I definitely wasn't allowed to know the location of the key. Don't get me wrong though. By what I've described so far, it probably sounds like I sleep on a dingy yellow mattress in the corner of a dirty trap house basement. That's not the case. I have a bedroom, fully furnished with a dresser, a nightstand, a TV, and a queen-sized bed. I'm not living in squalor, which I suppose adds to the mystery of my circumstances. I've asked Dad why he does it on multiple occasions. As a little girl, I used to whine and moan about the ankle brace all the time. The answer was always the same: to protect you from the monsters in the night who come to take little girls. As I grew older, I asked less and less, until eventually I stopped asking at all. Until 2 days ago, that is. That was when I turned 17. Sasha and Maria threw me a fantastic surprise party with all my high school friends in attendance. None of them knew about my nightly confinement. I'd managed to keep it all under wraps, terrified that Dad would lose custody of me and that I would get placed in foster care until I was 18. So, without having a solid alibi, it was tough to refuse when the girls invited me to sleep over at Sasha's. "Look, it's just one night. You can't get away for that long. This is your frickin' birthday, Sam. You need to let loose a little," Sasha said. Maria and Emily nodded in agreement. "I'm sorry, but I can't," I replied, my eyes glued to the floor. "My dad won't let me." "Can't you at least ask?" "The worst he can say is no, right?" Anna chimed in. "But I already know what he's going to say." "You won't find out unless you try," Maria said, arms folded across her chest. "Just ask him, alright?" I sighed, realizing that this wasn't a battle I was going to win. "Okay, I'll talk to him, but don't get your hopes up." My heart jackhammered in my chest as the ankle brace clicked shut. "I love you, sweetheart." "Happy birthday," Dad said, kissing my forehead. He stood, heading for the door. This was my chance. Dad?" He stopped, one foot in the hallway. "What's up?" "Can I talk to you about something?" His expression dropped, and I could see the worry etched across his features. "Anything," he said, returning to the foot of my bed and sitting down. "Is something bothering you? It's not one of those mean girls at school again, is it?" "No, not exactly." I paused, trying to find the right way to broach the subject. I finally met his gaze, my determination unwavering. My friends are having a sleepover to celebrate my birthday tomorrow night. They want me to come. Dad pursed his lips, his eyes falling to the floor. I'm sorry, Sam. You know the rules. You'll understand someday. Tears threatened to spill down my cheeks. Dad stood to leave, but I snatched his hand. Why? Why is any of this necessary? I'm a teenage girl. I want to go out with my friends. I want to stay up talking about boys. I want to be free from this bed. I can't live like this forever, Dad. He frowned. I could practically see the thoughts swimming in his head. Okay. I think you're old enough to know the truth. Dad sat back down. I could tell that this was difficult for him. This is going to sound absolutely ridiculous, but you have to bear with me. Do you remember when you were a little girl, and I told you that we needed to do this so the monsters wouldn't drag you away? I furrowed my brows, but I nodded. Well, that was only a half lie. There's not some werewolf or vampire or alien creature waiting to drag you off into the night. Sam, you have to believe me, he said, taking my hand. The monster is inside of you. I cocked my head to the side, struggling to comprehend his words. What do you mean? Years ago, I made a deal with something not from this world. When you were just 7 months old, you and your mother were involved in a fatal car accident. She died on impact, but you were left in critical condition. I was desperate then. You'd been rushed to the ICU and the doctors told me that it didn't look good. It would have taken a miracle for you to pull through without lifelong medical issues. Samantha, I have never been a religious man, but that night I prayed. I prayed to any deity that would listen just to make you healthy again. I'd already lost your mother. I couldn't lose you too. He paused, tears running down his cheeks, before continuing. I didn't expect it to actually work, but it did. Something answered my prayer, but it didn't come without a price. In exchange for your life, this entity has been living inside you for the past 16 years. It only awakens in the moonlight, so I did the only thing I could do. I kept you from going out at night. I don't know what that thing is, but I know that if it awakens, bad things are going to happen. I know it sounds unbelievable, but this is it. The honest truth. I stared at Dad as he searched my expression. It was then that the realization finally hit me. My father was utterly insane. My finger hovered over the button. I took a deep breath, the weight of my plan sinking in, and I pressed send. Got Dad's permission. I'll be there tonight. The group chat blew up with a slew of celebratory responses. I felt a war raging inside me as I read the replies. On one hand, I was more excited than I'd ever been in my life, but at the same time, a more sensible part of me knew that I couldn't count my chickens before they hatched. I couldn't afford to screw this up. I was off from school that day. Dad was busy working his second job. He'd be gone for a good 8 hours, offering me the perfect chance to enact my scheme. Bye, honey. I'm going to work. Be back later. All right, bye, I replied, my heart palpitating with anticipation. I watched through the blinds as Dad's car trundled down the street. Once his taillights disappeared from view, I made a beeline for his room. He kept the key to my restraints at the back of his sock drawer. Fortunately for me, this wasn't my first time snooping through his stuff. The process to have a key duplicated was surprisingly easy. To my luck, the key was a more modern model, not one of the clunky, old-timey ones seen on TV, so I didn't receive any strange looks when I asked to have it copied at the hardware store around the corner. I couldn't help but grin on the drive back home. I found myself rubbing my thumb along the smooth, metallic surface over and over again, wondering why I hadn't thought of this sooner. That key was my ticket to freedom. I loved my father, but he needed to learn that his delusions were just that, and that I was done putting up with them. I couldn't stop pacing around the house all day, eagerly awaiting bedtime. I was so anxious when it finally arrived that I thought my head might explode. Dad locked the shackle around my ankle as per usual, stood, then turned back to me. "I love you, Samantha. More than you will ever know. Good night, sweetheart." "Good night, Dad. I love you too." The door shut, and I waited with bated breath, listening for the sound of Dad's own bedroom door from down the hall. He was an early bird who seldom stayed up much later than I did. The second I heard the muffled sound of the door closing, I produced the key I'd hidden inside my pillowcase and tried the locking mechanism. It slipped right in and turned with a satisfying click. I pumped my fist, relishing in my newfound freedom. Though I was relieved of my restraint, I wasn't stupid enough to make an immediate dash for the back door. If I wanted this to work, I had to be certain that Dad was asleep. I figured 30 minutes would be long enough. The seconds crawled past as I awaited my escape. The "where are you?" and "I can't wait for you to get here." Texts from my friends didn't help, but eventually the time came for me to sneak out of the house. I was giddy with excitement as I tiptoed down the hall. The silence that permeated the house felt deafening. Each soft footfall thundered in my ears as I snuck along. I tensed when I passed Dad's room. He must have been fast asleep by then, because I didn't hear so much as a peep upon reaching the back door. My breath caught in my throat as I unlocked the deadbolt. I turned the handle, inching the door open ever so slowly to prevent it from squeaking. And there it was. The night sky was even more beautiful than I'd imagined. For the first time in my teenage life, I was looking up at the stars. I took a step forward, eyes glued to the heavens, and... "Sam? What are you doing?" My blood turned to ice as my father's voice rang out through the cool night air. I turned, tears welling in my eyes. This couldn't be happening. I'd been so careful. "Sam, please get away from the door and come back to bed," Dad said, extending a hand. I took a step back. My foot had crossed the threshold. "No, Dad, I won't," I said, unable to contain my sobs any longer. "You can't keep me like this forever. I won't do it anymore. I have a life, Dad. I want to live." I backed up, retreating so that I was standing under the moonlight, tears freely flowing down my cheeks. All the colour drained from Dad's face as he watched me extending my hands to the sky. I felt so free, so alive, so wrong. A strange sensation began to prickle the nape of my neck. It crawled across my skin, enveloping my body like a blanket. My head suddenly grew foggy, and my vision began to blur. "Dad? What's happening to me?" The last thing I remember was Dad rushing over to me before everything went black. My eyes were trained on the sky when I regained consciousness. A soft babbling sound drifted to my ears. My body felt strange, cool. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I began to tremble, dread swallowing me like a python as I mustered the courage to glance down. I found myself standing in a river, the water nearly up to my chin. It's been 3 weeks since then. My phone was gone and my clothes were soaked when I awoke. But when I finally managed to find my way back home, sopping wet and shaken to the core, I found Dad. This time, he was shackled to the radiator, bound and gagged, but otherwise unscathed. I untied him and apologized as I fell into his warm embrace. I should have believed him. My father isn't crazy. He never was. Something sinister lives inside of me, and it wants me dead. That's why I'm determined to never let it free again.